Yo, what's going on? It's your man Rick Dawn, and I just caught up on episode 8 of Temptation Island. Yeah, let's get to it. I want to start off with Brion. Brion is struggling. This is what every guy goes through when they get to a space of realization. This happened to me once. I was dating a young lady, and I was still in my cheating ways. She was a cheater too, so I don't want to. I don't make me feel bad than I already felt. But I was in my cheating ways, and I remember picking up a girl and bringing her to my house. And man, I almost like broke down after I took the girl home and I was driving home by myself. I almost broke down and started crying because I'm like, I felt such like a pig. I felt like a pig. I was like, yo, I am exactly the guy. I don't want to be this kind of guy. I want to actually pick a girl and stay with her and love her and be faithful to her. Yeah, that happened. Yeah, almost your man Rick the almost broke down in tears, and that's exactly where Brion is at. There comes a time when you, as a man, you meet a good woman that kind of brings something out of you. And I'll tell you, it's kind of like this. I'll tell you exactly what it is. A lot of times when guys have that emotional connection with a woman where they almost break down into tears, it's because the woman that they're with, they can almost envision their daughter going through that exact same situation. And I'll explain. When I was cheating with that other young lady and I took her home and I was coming back home, I had this weird sensation or phenomenon where I was like, what if my daughter had a guy like me where my daughter is at home expecting her boyfriend to call and he's doing exactly what I'm doing? Stuff like that really disrupts men. And that's what Brian is really going through. I'm going to tell you, that's exactly what he's going through because two things are happening. He can see Shante as his wife, and he also can see Shante as his daughter. It sounds weird, but you get it. I'm pretty sure you're smart enough to understand what I'm saying. He sees Shante as, for example, if he were to have a daughter with Shante, she would look like Shante. That's kind of what I'm saying. So he sees Shante as his wife, but he also sees like almost looking through a globe or a crystal ball where he can see the future where his daughter is now experiencing these exact same pains and hurts as a result of dating a guy just like Brion. And that, I believe, is contributing to the tears that I saw in this episode. Brion broke down like never before. And this is, I'm learning from Brion, and I do appreciate him going through all this stuff for the betterment of mankind. He came onto the show mainly focusing on women, sex, threesomes, you name it. That was his main focus. And then he finally got it. And this is what men struggle with. A lot of guys, as you've probably heard, we think about sex all day long. Like seriously, it's really sad. We think about sex like every 4 minutes or something like that. And a lot of times, especially if we have a wife or a girlfriend, we're still thinking about it. It never goes away. So you're just thinking about it nonstop, and you imagine to yourself like, what would it feel like if I were to sleep with her? Like we go outside, we see women everywhere, or we go online, we see women there. We go on Instagram, we see women there. It's just like a bombardment of women all over the place, and guys are sexual. We're just sexual people, so we're always looking at women and fantasizing. And what Brion did was what we all do. We fantasize. But I think what was different for Brion is that he's on a show where it's almost allowed. Like he's on a show where women are there to tempt you. In the real world, women are there to look good for themselves. And they just happen to be around you. And you can't necessarily indulge in that because then you become a creep. But he's on a show where these women are actively trying to tempt him. And most men would fail in the space that Brion occupies. So he indulges in the threesome. He has his fun. And then after that dopamine rush comes down, he's stuck with the reality of, wait a minute, what did I just do? He's stuck with the reality that he must face, in which he hurts a girl that is a freaking angel. I've seen just about every season of Temptation Island. I'm talking about well before it was on Netflix. And I don't think I've ever seen a woman represent herself as well as Shante has. I mean, we're talking about no matter who, because a lot of times with women or people in general, if their partner does something, that will help them validate their behavior as they move forward. But that wasn't the case with Shante. Like, she's a perfect representation of a woman, the perfect representation of a wife, and the perfect representation of a Christian woman. No matter what Brion has done, Shante has not diverged from her character. And we already see small sample sizes of what she is going to have to figure out when she goes to that final bonfire with Brion. All right, we know what she's going to have to face because as a Christian woman, she's drilled and drilled and drilled with this whole concept of forgiveness because we all deserve it. We all need it. I won't say deserve, but I definitely believe we all need it. And as Christians, we're granted that forgiveness. Granted, we try to change. Okay. And like any Christian, we're often trying to exemplify Jesus Christ, right? Who's always forgiving. There's been situations where women who are quote unquote prostitutes have been forgiven in a finger snap by Jesus. So, as Christians, we're often trying to exude that exact same level of forgiveness. But it's so difficult because we're not Jesus. This is what made Jesus so important. Brion has done everything to disrespect this woman as far as cheating on her and then acting like he doesn't really have any remorse. In fact, in this episode, he was called out for it because, they were going on this big old date. Everybody was supposed to pick somebody to go on this big old date with. And the young lady who Brion initially picked, she called him out and said, look, she's a girl's girl, and she just doesn't feel good about the way that Brion has represented himself on the show. And I did a little investigation, and I realized and found out that the young lady who basically called Brion out is also a Christian. So, even though she's dressed scantily clad and her bikini is extra tight, and yeah, I'm just going to stop there. She still represents or feels that in her heart, she's a representative of Christ, right? She's beautiful, and she's on a show where there's a sun out, there's a beach out. I mean, she's in a bikini. She's not naked, for crying out loud. But the point being, she basically calls Brion out and says, hey, I can't go on that date with you because she's a girl's girl and she's witnessing what Brion is doing to Shante, and she's not cool with it. And this is one of the first times that Brion gets humbled because, he comes onto the show as if he's the gift to all women. But here he is being turned down left and right because these women, believe it or not, they're standing behind Shante. They're not saying that directly, but they're showing that inadvertently. Because I forget her name, the young lady he went on a date with the little massage table. She called him out and said, hey, we're not a connection. We're not a match. I don't like the way he doesn't take accountability. And then this young lady on this episode basically says the exact same thing. But Shante, we see a little clip from episode 9 towards the end of episode 8, and we see that she is going to break down at this final bonfire as she confronts and comes face to face with Brion after all these weeks. And she, in the moment, asks if she can take some time to collect herself. And she says she's struggling with a few things. She's struggling with whether or not she should leave him, whether she should forgive him. These are things that me and you are like, what are you saying, Shante? The man just had a threesome on national TV and embarrassed you, and then didn't have any remorse. What do you mean? Should you forgive him? What do you mean? That's what we're saying. But again, I'll say it again because it's a real thing. She is exhibiting the forgiveness and the love of Christ. This is what Christians do, right? We're all guilty of something, and what she's doing is saying, yes, Brion has disrespected me, but he's a human being. But I need grace. That's what she's extending to Brion. She's extending grace to him, and to my surprise, Brion is breaking down in such a way that he's cried more in this episode than I've seen him cry all season long. And it's because of the guilt. It's because he knows that he stands to lose a good woman, right? And he also realizes that threesomes are not the end all be all. They're not. He's looking at a woman who can go on to create beautiful children for him, to create a legacy for Brion. And he's mixing that up with sex. Like, sex is cool. Sex is a great representation of a 5-minute, 10-minute, 20-minute realm of enjoyment. But we're talking about legacy, which means years, decades. Here's a woman who can provide you sex, mind you, but here's a woman who could be important to your legacy and bringing you children, and who better to create children with than a woman like Shante? You know for a fact that she's going to be an amazing role model for your daughter. You know that because she's forgiving you, Brion, you know that she's going to do an amazing job with a son that you might create. I mean, who wouldn't want to create a child with a woman like Shante? Whereas, okay, these women you're having these threesomes with, I mean, they don't even care that you're in a relationship, Brion. So what does that mean? That means that they would be terrible, terrible role models for your daughter. And for your sons, who knows? You see what I'm saying? So he's struggling with that. He's really, really struggling with that. And I'm glad he's struggling with it. He deserves every bit of struggle. This was a cool relationship, Tayler and Tayler. It was amazing to see this episode because Tayler has found her groove. She has been, and I don't know the guy's name. He's the big muscular black guy who no one saw finding a connection with Tayler. Somehow, some way, Tayler and this guy, they are like two peas in a pod. And I love it because what it shows is, race is just a human or a man-made concept. In reality, we're all God's children, and we just all happen to look different because we're all, based on these different mixtures and, people and personalities and things of that nature. And it's completely okay that these two, that being Tayler and I forget his name, the black guy. I'm gonna have to call him the black guy, unfortunately. But it's completely normal that those two would find love in the way that they have. So she picks him to go on that big old date, and they have the most romantic moment in the water, or it's like a waterfall even, and they kiss and they're like skin tight, and you just see it. Like she's starting to fall for him, and she has finally, I'm talking about Tayler, has finally come to the conclusion that her and Tayler are over because she's watching clips of Tayler absolutely fall in love with Kay. Now, I don't understand how this is happening. And I wondered myself as I'm watching these clips, I'm like, how is this possible that Tayler has not crossed the line sexually with Kay? I can't tell you how that's possible. We're talking about they are clearly in love. They are sleeping together in the same bed. They're tongue kissing while they're sleeping together in the same bed. They're going on dates. They're having these romantic moments in which they're holding hands and looking into each other's eyes. And I'm like, how are they not having sex? And then it dawns on me, and I think it comes to me because Tayler kind of points out what's going on. He says, look, I don't want to make the same mistake where I'm leading with sex. And I think he has made that mistake in the past where he's jumping from relationship to relationship. In fact, when he met Tayler, he was just coming out of a marriage. And I think he's learning that, you don't want to go from one relationship to the next, to the next, to the next without having that moment to really gain some clarity. So while he really finds Kay attractive and he even has one of the strongest connections and may even be falling in love with Kay, I think he's, becoming a little bit more mature in that aspect, realizing that, hey, even though I do really like Kay, even love Kay, I owe it to myself to see the relationship with Tayler to the end, meaning he needs to have some kind of closure with her before he can completely move on with Kay. And we see that in the previews of episode 9 and 10. But unbeknownst to him, when he gets to that bonfire, that final bonfire with Tayler, Tayler is not going for it. In fact, he asks for a hug. I'm talking about Tayler. And Tayler absolutely shuts him down. And we saw in this episode as Tayler looks at Tyler's clips with Kay, and you're thinking to yourself, she's absolutely strong. She's saying all the right things, but you just see her heart and her soul breaking as she sees Tayler, someone that she was in love with, form a new love or a new connection with Kay. It's really tough. And we also see the exact same thing from Tayler as he sees Tayler in this strong, big black man fall in love. It's really tough for him. He does do a good job with kind of keeping a stone face, but he can't, as men, we all know what it would feel like to watch our woman, whether we're with her or we're over her. It'll be difficult for all of us to see our woman move on. There's women I've dated in like high school that I don't necessarily want to see, move on or kiss somebody else just because we've had that moment together. It's just difficult. And man, yeah. So next we have to talk about Grant and Ashley. This is a weird relationship. I don't know what's going on here. This is a relationship that has basically broken down on all cylinders because Grant has 1000% moved on with Natalie, and he's happy with Natalie from what I can tell. And it's funny because at the bonfire where Grant gets to finally see Ashley move on. And I forget his name. His name might be Danny. I'm going to just say Danny. I think his name is Danny. But when Grant sees Ashley and Danny kiss, and, when he sees that Danny is sleeping in the bed with Ashley and stays the night. And they did Grant real grimy. They did Grant grimy because at the bonfire, they don't show him that Ashley and Danny only kissed, right? What they do is they show Danny and Ashley have a wonderful date. They're kissing and touching on the date. Then they show Grant that Danny spends the night with Ashley and they're kissing hot and heavy. The kissing is hot and heavy. And then it shuts off. And I can tell by Grant's expression that he thinks, hey, they had sex that night. I don't think they really did. I just think that the way that clip was edited, it comes across as if they did. But I'm so glad that happens to to Grant, because Grant has been so disrespectful to Ashley. Like, Ashley is a beautiful girl, period. And she has been, in my opinion, a really great example of a good-looking woman who can actually move on rather easily, still representing herself in a respectful manner. I think that Ashley's, falling for Danny stems directly from the fact that Grant has shown her no respect. There's no redeeming qualities. At least with Tayler. Tayler hasn't had sex with Kay. Even though, he's done everything in terms of kissing and holding and hugging and sleeping over and all that, he hasn't crossed that line sexually. So that gives Tayler a little hope that, Tayler isn't a complete scumbag. But when you're talking about Grant has, openly made love to Natalie. And, you saw the episode, or maybe you didn't, but there's an episode where him and Natalie are getting busy in the shower and he moaning louder than her. You know what I'm saying? So, that's what he's given Ashley to consider. And, I was so happy to see that Ashley finally put herself first and moved on. Like, you don't want to keep fighting for someone who's going in the opposite direction. So, it was great to see that. And I think the funniest thing about this relationship happens at the end when Grant is at the bonfire and he's watching the clip of Danny and Ashley start to make out. And he literally tells Mark, hey, that's enough. I've seen enough. Because they're kissing and kissing and kissing and kissing and tonguing. It's getting more and more intense. And they keep panning to Grant's face to show you his expression and, what he's seeing and how he's reacting to what he's seeing. It's the greatest thing ever, because you realize he deserves to see this. And he sees so much that he's begging Mark to cut the clip. Like, hey, okay, I see where this is going. He just doesn't want to see the actual action. Like, he sees the kissing, but he also knows that kissing, in terms of how intense it was, he knows where it's going to lead. Like, it's going to lead to some business. And he don't even want to see it. He don't even want to. And it's kind of hypocritical because, look, he hasn't granted Ashley that level of mercy. He was digging in. He was going all in to Natalie in front of the cameras and everything. So it's like, yo, bro, you're going to have to watch that. You need to watch that. You need to watch your girl get dug out because you have given her no respect. I just feel like it is what it is. I feel like you reap what you sow. I feel like if you disrespect your spouse, I mean, what else are they supposed to do? You know what I'm saying? Like, you gave them no choice. That's how I really feel. And I feel that way about Ashley and Grant. I was happy to see Ashley and Danny start to form a connection. But even though that is the case, she still is in love with Grant. And she can't fool me. At the bonfire, Mark shows Ashley some clips of Grant and Natalie. And you thought by this point, after seeing all that Ashley has seen, you think by this point she would be completely over Grant. But man, she is not completely over Grant. She's over him in terms of being able to move on with Danny and stuff like that. But in terms of like a percentage, I would say she's about 92% over Grant. No, I'm going to go with like 87% over Grant. But that 13% is there and it's kicking, because when she sees Grant and Natalie and the things that Grant is saying to Natalie, like, I see a future with us and stuff like that, it broke her down at the bonfire. And I'm so glad she had the confidence to allow those tears to flow, because, we've been seeing this a lot from both sides, that these couples have been trying to keep this straight face when they're seeing these very terrible things. So It was great to see that she broke down and let those tears flow out. I felt like she really deserved to release that. All right, but then we go to Alexa and Lino. They stay together. Everyone, good night. It's been fun. Okay, no, I'm not gonna do that. But look, so these two, we know that they are the strongest relationship. We know that they um, have respected each other the most. But this episode, something slightly different happens. The same young lady that Brion had a threesome with, she is now on the prowl and trying to break Lino. And I don't think she's really trying. I think it's more Lino that's being tempted. I feel like she has no intention of being with Lino in a sexual manner. I think she kind of already, has done what she wanted to do sexually. I think she just really enjoys the comfort that Lino provides. I think that she looks at Lino as a relationship type, whereas with Brion, that satisfies something physical for her. I don't think she has that strong physical attraction to Lino, but I think she, really likes him from a mental standpoint. But this episode, we see that Lino is struggling with this young lady. She is beautiful, so I get it. And she's very flirtatious. So Lino is struggling with her, but it's a safe struggle. You don't have, or there's no part of me that believes that Lino is going to crash out and jeopardize his relationship with Alexa over this young lady. But I do think he's enjoying himself. I think he's enjoying the attention. I think he's enjoying, the energy that he's getting from her, but not so much that he would jeopardize his relationship. Whereas with Alexa, she's playing it extremely safe. She does or has developed a great friendship. I think his name might be Gio. Don't hold me to that. But she's developed a friendship with him. But she's made it extremely and abundantly clear that it is a friendship. You don't get any sense that she's going to crash out for the gentleman that she went on a date with. But I love that with Alexa, she's made it clear there's no way you can misinterpret. She's made it extremely clear that there's nothing that's going to go forth or happen between her and the gentleman that she went on a date with. I want to say Gio, but don't hold me to that. But yeah, at the bonfire, Alexa sees a clip of Lino and the young lady I just told you about, kind of enjoying conversation and laughing. And she even hears Lino say, you are tempting me so much, I need to go to bed. She hears that, and that really rocked her. I didn't expect it to rock her so much, but Lino has given her a lot to be afraid or to doubt throughout the relationship, mainly because of how their relationship started, where Alexa had two boyfriends and Lino being the second option. Ever since Lino discovered that, he's kind of had this thing where he's kind of pointed the finger at Alexa. So when Lino says to the young lady, like, hey, I need to go to bed because you're creating some problems for him, and she's making him feel tempted, they cut the clip right there, which leaves this open end where you don't really know what happens. Like, hey, did she go to bed with him, or did something happen? Of course not. Temptation Island is messy, and they would show it if Lino and a young lady went to the room. You know that, Alexa. So, but it doesn't help her in that moment, because in that moment she does start to have some doubts and some concerns. Okay, but that's about all that happened in this episode. And in the next episode, I can see some things that's going to start to formulate. I see that Lino and Alexa are going to go home together. There's no question about that. I see that Brion and Shante are going to have some problems, because Shante is struggling with whether or not she wants to forgive Brion or move on. She's going to struggle with that. I believe that she's going to choose to go home alone. And I think once she's home alone, Brion will make it up off camera and they'll get back together, because they have choices. They can go home alone, stay together, or go home with someone new. I think she's going to go home alone to have some time to reflect and think and be around family and people who love her. I think that's what is going to happen with Shante. When it comes to Ashley and Grant, they're going to go home separately. I think Ashley's going to go home alone, and I know for a fact that Grant is going to go home with Natalie. All right, when it comes to Tayler and Tayler, no question about it. Tyler's going to go home with Kay, and Tayler is going to go home by herself. I don't think that she's going to form a relationship with the black guy. Sorry. All right, I don't think she's going to form a relationship with him based on what has happened on the show. I think that he was a nice distraction, but I think in the real world, I don't know if that relationship really has legs, okay? But I think that's what we are gearing up to see. Thank you all for watching. I hope that was informative. We'll see what happens.